A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Welcome to another week, and welcome to what might be the coolest Monday we've ever had on Dan Really Likes Wine. And not simply because there are 6 seriously awesome bottles of wine to be tasted, such are the demands of my job, but we've got some fabulous people discussing some pretty cool angles on the world of wine. And I can't wait to introduce them, to share the wine with you, and to tell their stories. I'm going to let you know who's on the show in just a moment. Before we do that, though, just as usual on a Monday, a couple of things to throw forward to. This will run till just before 6 o'clock, at which point, athletically, I shall leap from my chair, dash out the cellar, and nip across to the Dan Nichols Show studio, where we will be chatting on Instagram Live at 6 o'clock on the Dan Nichols Show channel to Aidan Markram on the back of the Tour of Pakistan. Famous 100 he got in a losing cause. Is he the next Proteas captain? So that's via the Dan Nichols Show on Instagram at 6 o'clock. We've also got Matthew Booth, former Bafana captain, tomorrow. And then tonight at 9 o'clock on Two Full Tossers, myself and Alan Committee, and our shared obsession for the sillier side of cricket. And our guest, Nick Compton, the former England opening batsman, as England do battle with India in the second test at the moment. So it is a busy Monday. It's a busy week of wine as well. Later this week, we will be chatting on Thursday to Corina Hoos from Kleine Zalze, not just about some terrific wine. And what a year 2020 was for Kleine Zalze, cleaning up awards all over the place. But Corina will also be joining me and a series of other guests from right around the world in taking part in Wine Future, the wine conference that kicks off next Tuesday from the 23rd to the 26th. And remember, if you'd like to go along, if you would like a ticket, tickets are normally 125 euros each. However, if you use the DNichols60 code, that drops down to 65 euros, and those tickets available winefuture2021.com. And there's some terrific people, including Francis Ford Coppola, the director extraordinaire, who's also got a pretty cool wine estate. Some great people. Have a look at the website, find out some more, come and join us. So that is the weekend. Also on Thursday, Melu Lambert, who, I'm trying to remember, she sent me an updated business card, Global Young Intergalactic Wine Writer of the Century, I think is her official title. She'll be joining us on Thursday with some of the wines she's particularly enjoying at the moment. Now, she has something of a partner of crime when it comes to gallivanting around the winelands and producing dazzling prose as a result. And that partner is the second of our guest halves today. Bubbles Hyland joins us on the show from Well Read Wine magazine, wrote some very impassioned stuff about the wine ban and was out getting her hands dirty helping with harvest. And Bubbles is taking us through a guided tour to Chardonnay. And some lovely Chardonnay she sent my way. So that's the second half of the show. First up, though, we are feeling awfully smug and awfully proud of ourselves here on Dan Really Likes Wine, because we are embracing wine made for a better future of the planet. And it is a very important aspect of wine making, ensuring that the terroir from which we pull the grapes that make our dazzlingly good wine is cared for, is looked after, and is preserved for future generations of both wine farmers and, far more importantly, wine drinkers. And so we are joined by a team from WWF, which I kept getting confused with the wrestling. I thought we might be speaking to The Rock tonight. I was getting very excited, as well as 3 terrific winemakers from Delheim and from Vonderling and also from Waterkloof. So let's welcome in from the WWF, Shelley Fuller, a very warm welcome and lovely to have you with us. So to Nora from Delheim, Nadia from Waterkloof, and Matt from Vonderling. And welcome to all of you as conservation champions, which I think is the point on which we must kick off. Shelley, welcome to you in particular, and thank you for putting together this dazzling team of winemakers and some great wine with it. Explain to me this project. It's put together by the WWF. It is the Conservation Champions. Exactly what are you doing it? Why are you doing it? And what sort of impact is it having on our local wine industry?
Thanks, Dan, and thanks to my partners in crime on the show for sort of flying the flag so high. So basically, yeah, the WWF, we're a conservation organization, Worldwide Fund for Nature, and we've been working with the wine industry for over 15 years now. South Africa is in a unique position where the terroir, like you spoke about, that brings about such unique, diverse palettes of our exceptional wine, is also home to a really biodiverse area. So the Cape Floral Kingdom is the most biodiverse hotspot in the world, with 70% of the plants that grow here grow nowhere else in the world. And as the wine industry was starting to expand in the early 2000s, a partnership was set up between the wine industry and conservation to say, okay, let's work together so that we can still continue to flourish as a wine industry in this really important part of the world. So yeah, we've been working with exceptional wine farms, and together we're making sure that the wine industry is something here to stay in South Africa, and that it continues to benefit people and planet. And now tonight we're trying to raise awareness so that consumers, when they choose their wine, are made more aware of these farms that are really, going far, far beyond just producing exceptional wine. They're committed to energy conservation, to nature conservation, and to producing exceptional wines without having a huge damage on their local environment. And you'll hear from them as well.
Now, the way we know that a wine fits into this category is because Shelley arrives at your wine farm and gives you a whole pile of these really cool stickers, which you then have to spend weeks putting onto your bottle, and that makes you a conservation champion. Practically speaking, Shelley, if I am a wine farmer, if I am a wine estate, what do I need to do for you to allocate me some of your collection of stickers?
It's more than the stickers. But yeah, Dan, to answer that question, basically we work with the IPW scheme, the Integrated Production of Wine. So that's the industry certification scheme for environmental best practice. And we ask that our conservation champions are part of that program so that the whole of South African industry is adopting that. And to date, roughly 90% of the industry is using that. So that's on the neck of the bottle. There's also a sustainability seal there with the traceability number. And we ask that our conservation champions do very well in that and showcase their leadership by getting a 70% score. And then over and above that, we work with each of the farms to develop an environmental management plan. So we support them through that, and they make certain commitments of how they're going to try and reduce their waste or conserve some of their natural area. And so it's a partnership, really. But the baseline is that they're part of IPW and they have a 70% score.
Well, let's go to the first of those estates and find out from them exactly why they're getting involved. Nora, over at Delheim, we've got some of your bubbles, which are particularly poignant given our 50th anniversary of the Cup Classique Association this year. Talk to me before we taste the wine about the motivation behind becoming part of this and how it impacts for you on the wine that Delheim produces.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having us. And yeah, so I thought I'll bring the Fynbos and show you what's actually growing out there. So this is Renosterveld, which we have growing in between the vineyards, and a lot of on Delheim. And in 1951, when my dad arrived here, he put a cow into this Fynbos, and the cow died after 3 days. And he thought there's something wrong with the Fynbos because it's not giving the cow enough nutrition, and so consequently he planted lots and lots of pine trees because the Fynbos meant nothing to sustain the beautiful cows he had raised here. It's only in the last 15 years with the WWF support that we've managed to realize what we're actually living in and need to conserve. And if it wasn't for the WWF Conservation Initiative and their assistance to write conservation management plans, we wouldn't exactly be where we are today. So it's been a tremendous journey for us, learning all the different terminologies in conservation and making a concerted effort to actually plan better that we look after the beautiful Fynbos that we have on the farm and that we have the privilege to look after. And I thought I'll actually show you something which we found last weekend on the property. This is actually a camera trap that we put up, which the WWF sponsors for us. And we've managed to see the leopard running around on the farm again. And those are the things that make us excited and why we continue to be involved in the conservation our nature around us.
It's an incredible picture, and I've seen a number of similar ones from through the winelands, and we get a real sense of some of that wilderness being reclaimed, and importantly so. What about from a wine perspective, Lenora? What sort of impact does employing the kind of standards that the WWF would like to see you living up to have on the wine itself?
I'd say the difference is putting corridors, natural corridors back into the vineyards, where you have everything from mice to small little animals starting to flourish again, where in the past we would definitely not be thinking twice about just keeping all the different areas between the vineyards clean. Now we work far more in harmony with nature. Everything from water recycling out of the cellar to recycling every piece of plastic or cardboard that we use in the production of the winery is looked after. So it's not just a organic process in the vineyard, it's a holistic process in winemaking. Formula makes better wine, it's not just in the vineyard. And that's what we're trying to convey in the message to the consumers out there. All our wines are better because of the way we look after the business people and the environment.
It's a case of everybody wins, which is what we all want. I'm going to need some proof of this, though, Nora. So let's find some in the glass that is in front of me. 50 years of Cup Classique. This links to our wine later. We've got 3 terrific Chardonnays. This is from Chardonnay. Introduce us to your Blanc de Blanc and what makes it stand out.
So the Blanc de Blanc means white from white, Blanc de Blanc, which then means it's 100% Chardonnay. And I've actually got a nice bunch of Chardonnay grapes out of the vineyards this morning. So to show you, the grapes we use for making wine are small or edible grapes. People are often quite surprised to see how small the grapes are. They have a very small skin or thin skin, and the juice inside is just as nice to eat, even the red grapes. So if ever you feel like coming out to the winelands during harvest time, please, the grapes are all ripening now. It's a wonderful time to see how the grapes taste and what we're doing. So these Chardonnay grapes grow up at 350 meters above sea level, which is in our area cool climate. And we pick very early. We've actually just picked the first Chardonnay this week, and we press it to make our Chardonnay sparkling wine, which I have in my glass. And it's it's a wonderful way of sharing the joy of life is in a bit of bubbles, and we can never have enough bubbles in our life, especially during COVID. I'm sure all of you have the opportunity to have had some bubbles in your cupboard during the time when we were not allowed to buy or sell anything. Could always enjoy a good bubbles to celebrate life. So to me, it's more than just the wine in the bottle. It's celebrating life and adding bubbles to our daily lives.
Something I never need too much persuasion to do, Nora. It's just delightful, lovely touch of citrus, such a beautiful, creamy finish. Our Cup Classique selection in South Africa really is outstanding. Delheim, yet another great example. A few people watching in. Maylu Lambert, nice crowd, says Maylu. Well, she'll be half of that crowd come Thursday when she joins us on the show. And then Daryl Belfour. Good evening, Dan, Nora, and others. Great to see this initiative. Those Cape Mountain leopards are very special. Daryl, thanks for tuning in again. It is fantastic to see, provided it is on a photograph, not face-to-face at 2 o'clock in the morning after a wine-fueled stroll through the vineyards. Let's move over to Waterkloof and to Nadia. I think, Nadia, the last time we caught up was the South African Wine Tribe in London, where we had some of your terrific wine. Some interesting times for the industry as a whole. I think one of the saddest stories to come out of lockdown was the departure of a restaurant that was a favorite to so many. I know that you've had a little bit of time as Waterkloof to deal with that. Any plans on the horizon for for new developments once the industry starts to find its feet a little again?
Well, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, not now. The owner of the farm, put it this way, hasn't sold any of the equipment, so everything is still in place. But time will tell. Hey, I think he just wants to sit back and see how everything plays out. In South Africa, they're talking about a third wave again. So I think it was a wise decision to just evaluate what he wants to be doing in the future, because it's been difficult times, and he decided to rather close earlier, so he can still pay his staff proper settlements and pay his suppliers, rather than having to close and liquidate and not be able to pay anyone. Hey?
It is just one of the many sad stories to have emerged out of lockdown. And it's another good reason to have a very large glass of wine, just to make the world feel a little better. So let's do exactly that with your Chenin Blanc, which also falls under this Conservation Champions label, and very happily so. What does that mean to you? How important is this sort of initiative, both to Nadia Barnard and to Waterkloof?
Well, first of all, at Waterkloof, we are farming already organically as well as biodynamically, and a lot of people are aware of that. But even though you are farming this way, you're still farming a monoculture. So it's essential to try and keep half of the property under indigenous plantation. And like Shelly said, it's amazing to think that 70% of these fauna and flora you only get in the Cape. So we need to conserve this. So we've got a very large portion of the property that's under indigenous plantation. Well, the past couple of years it's burnt naturally, but if we have to help the sporulation process, we will do controlled fires. But as the moment goes, we don't have to at all do that. And we try and take out alien plantation and just keep the indigenous plantation intact.
What does it change in terms of your approach to winemaking? Does anything radically alter in terms of the way you get grape to bottle?
I wouldn't say it's got a massive impact on how we work in the winery or anything. But the fact of the matter is that we're not spraying chemicals in our vineyards. We're not spraying fungicides, herbicides, or pesticides. And to be able to get that 70% rating or at IPW, you need to be working this way. And if you're not spraying all of these chemicals, your vineyard is naturally in balance. If your vineyard is happy, your grapes are better, and you make much better wine that's also in balance. And I find that quite essential. So we do quite a few different ranges at Waterkloof. So we do our circumstance range, which is the organic range. And if you compare the grapes from these vineyards to grapes which we buy in for our Peacock range, which is right next door, there's just quite a big difference. Just the concentration that you get from these vineyards are fantastic, because there's much more life in the soil. You walk in the vineyards and the soil's loose. There's earthworms in the soil. There's bacteria. There's fungi. And that's the way that nature intended us to farm. So I would definitely say, I believe that we're making better wine, cleaner, purer wine.
I think I can't see her at the moment, but I know Shelley has got a large smile on her face as a result. And all the things I want in my wine there, Nadia: earthworms, bacteria, fungi, all the things that come through. Your wine is incredibly popular, and you've got many accolades. Let's try one of them. It is from that very organic range, the Circumstance Chenin Blanc, which I have a glass poured of, and at this point somehow Ina Smith is just automatically tuning in celebration. It's the grape that is doing such great things for South Africa at the moment, and you're able to take that grape and just give it the added advantage of producing it organically. Yeah,
no, it's a fantastic varietal, and I quite like working with Chenin. We're actually getting slowly but surely getting the Chenins in now. So you pick Chenin Blanc when it just starts to turn yellow, and you obviously taste it as well and look at the analyses to take all of that together and decide when to pick. So that's what we're doing at the moment. And this circumstance Chenin is off the property. It's organically grown fruit. Took the grapes, gave it a soft pressing in our basket press, and let it settle and put it to barrel. And we're not adding anything to the fermentation. So normally you would add a packet of yeast coming from France or wherever. And but we felt because we're not spraying any chemicals in our vineyards, we've got naturally occurring yeast in our vineyards. So we let the fermentation go. It takes about 7 months. So that saying patience is a virtue is very much applicable to our way of winemaking. And then we just give it a basic filtration and put it to bottle. So like I say, keeping it pure and simple and letting what we taste in the vineyards get, you can taste that in your glass.
Can indeed. Beautiful fresh fruit, lovely clean finish. It's another glorious Nadia Barnard wine. And if you want to know how good organic wine is for you, Nadia drinks almost exclusively the Circumstance range, and she's actually turning 68 this month. And look how good she looks, and that's purely from drinking all of this fantastic organic wine. A couple of comments before we move on to Matthew. Greg Sherwood throwing back to the Cup Classique from Delheim, and Nora, I knew it was a good idea to do my Master of Wine dissertation on MCC, such a great category. I'll be celebrating my 50th this year along with the Cup Classique industry. I think it's the 7th year that Greg is celebrating his 50th birthday, but we'll allow him that nonetheless. Grant Sauls on YouTube. I really like the Peacock Syrah and Chardonnay. That's another fan there for you, Nadia. Scott Stapelberg dropping in. How's it, Dan and company? Scott, good to see you online. Thank you. And then Angela Lloyd. The Wine Kingdom Celebrating Conservation in the Cape Winelands was published by WWF in 2014. It featured all the conservation chat. And then Angela ran out of wine, and hopefully she'll be back again shortly. Let's head over to Matthew at Vonderling. Matthew, the wine you have for us here this evening is a white blend, and I'm very excited to try it, which we will in just a second. We've heard the perspectives of both Nora and Nadia on what it means to them to be part of the WWF Conservation Champions program. What does it mean to you? How important is it to you?
Hi, Dan. So long before the WWF endorsed actually being the champions, and I should actually mention that it's very appropriate, the name champion. It takes a champion to sort of push the cause, and Shelley is one of those champions, and the other champion on our farm is actually the wife of my boss, Richard Johnson. So we've been busy for a long time on the farm. In fact, about 2/3 of the farm is natural fynbos in the Paardeberg area, and very, very special. Certain plant species in this rather small mountain occur only there, so they're entirely endemic to the Paardeberg, and as such, they've become the flag bearers for our wines. The one wine, the white blend that we'll be tasting tonight, is in fact a plant species unique to the Paardeberg called the Babiana noctiflora. So I think Shelley mentioned right at the beginning, it's a kind of a three-pronged approach. So we are focusing very much on water conservation by alien vegetation clearing. We've got poplars, Port Jackson, pines, all those sort of things on the mountain. And we're sort of right at the top of the farming area. So we're first in line for runoff. And so this gives us beautiful purity of water, which we found was diminishing year on year. And then you have to rely on alternative water sources. So it's very important to do that. Then the other one is energy conservation. We're committed to solar installations, and in fact, just last week, completed a second phase of solar installations. And then with that, of course, is soil. So we've got cover crops, we've got corridors. And I think if you're talking strictly in terms of wine and quality of wine production, I'll agree with Nadia about the earthworms and the fungi and the bacteria. if your soil is alive, it's supplying the correct nutrients to your plants, which is going to produce a healthier, more robust grape, which will be less susceptible to spoilage, and therefore far less manipulation is required. And you just have a more natural, more holistic product in your glass, which of course is healthier.
From a winemaker's perspective, I think there was a time when there was a lot of lip service paid to this kind of space. People spoke about going green, but didn't really do that much about it. Now, not only is, I think, taken far more seriously and taken far more honestly, but I think I really get the sense that across the whole farming industry, but wine in particular, as climate change starts to wreak more havoc, wine farmers, wine growers are really understanding that this is not a nice to have. This is an absolutely essential.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the criteria to be a champion is your practices must evolve. You can't just do something and then sit in your laurels. You have to constantly improve and constantly look at things that you can amend in your cellar practices and on the farm. So, and it's incredible, actually, ourselves as micro producers, what an impact a relatively small decision can make. So, for instance, on our sort of more everyday drinking wines, the Chennons and Rosés and Merlot, if I choose to use a lighter bottle, it's 200 grams a bottle, I can save 30 tons of glass a year. That's very quick. If I choose to use different paper on the label, that also relates to tons of paper that just goes to waste. So it's very, very quick to make very meaningful changes in the cellar. And as I say, the tricky part actually becomes the ongoing evolution of these processes. That's the hardest part.
All of which is part of the process of making the fabulous wine, which we'll celebrate this evening. Greg Sherwood, how's it, Matt? We are lucky enough to still be selling the fabulous Vonderling Babiana 2017. Well, it's the 2019 that we have here with us. It is a sumptuous-looking white blend. Let us know what goes into this and what makes this quite so special, Matt.
Right. So I grew up in Paarl, and my first love, I remember, in fact, having my first bottle of Chenin Blanc. It was, in fact, from Eersterivier in Stellenbosch. And I just fell in love with Chenin Blanc, and I've never stopped this love affair for Chenin Blanc. It's truly the wine that made me fall in love with South African wines in particular. So I make sure that this blend always has at least 50%. It once had in 2017, the one that Greg Sherwood's got, that I think was 64% Chenin. That was the highest ever. It was just a fantastic vintage for Chenin, and that's what the blend reflects, the best that we can do in that year and the best harmony through the various grapes that are incorporated in it. So normally we would have this leading majority of Chenin Blanc, which would then be followed with Viognier in the regions of 20%, and then with Grenache Blanc and a small amount of Roussanne. And so what the Chenin does is it's full, it's generous, it's reliable. We've got a most amazing block of Chenin Blanc from 1987 that forms the backbone of the Babiana. And then, of course, Viognier brings a lot of spice, it brings a lot of structure. I fermented partially on the skins, and that brings out some of that sort of pepperiness and adds longevity to the wine. The Grenache Blanc, because it's quite steely with lots of nice, vibrant acidity, just lengthens the palate, freshens everything up, and then the Roussanne is just kind of the glue that puts it together.
Well, the combination is absolutely glorious. I've had many conversations with Greg Sherwood, amongst others, about just how strong a category South African white blends and those headlined by Chenin are. And this is another terrific example. Still 2019. I suspect there's a lot more to be told in this particular story. But it is already drinking beautifully. The nose is glorious. And that makes it 3 out of 3 for 3 fabulous wines that Shelley has facilitated. As we wrap up with the 4 of you, and we definitely need to do this again soon because it's a conversation we've only really just touched on. Shelley, if I can go back to you very quickly, you've had some great endorsements from 3 wine estates who clearly embrace and value your practices. What's next for the South African wine industry? What do we still need to really focus on to get done to try and ensure that your aims in getting the conservation champions to become more widespread are fully met?
Thanks, Dan. And yeah, thanks again for your stories, 3 champions here. We work with roughly 45 farms at the moment, and we're growing. And it's interesting in these challenging times that COVID and the lockdown and the prohibitions have brought to the industry, there's more and more interest coming from the farms, recognizing the role of telling your story and connecting with your consumer and telling all the good news stories of how you produce your wine. So we look forward to continuing this fabulous journey with these farms and to spreading the word far and wide and to get that Sugarbird and Protea logo on many bottles and consumers supporting by buying lots of South African wine. Thank you.
All right. Speaking of South African wine, Ronaldo, if you can just bring everybody back on screen and let's get a last 30 seconds from our wine producers. Nora, kicking off with you. We tried your bubbles. Fabulous. Give us one other wine we should maybe look out for. And I think I might have seen something of yours in Pick n Pay just the other day that caught my eye.
So we actually just launched this week the family blend, which you'll find in Pick n Pay, and it's got the new beautiful logo of the WWF Conservation Champion on it. So look out for the logo, look out for the wine, and enjoy on our behalf while we can responsibly. Thank you for having us on your show. Thanks, Dan.
There we go. Thank you, Nora. And as you saw from the label, suitable for vegans because it makes them more interesting after they've had a bottle or two of wine. Nadia, what else should I be looking out for from Team Waterkloof?
Definitely our Circle of Life white and red blend. That is, especially the white, is drinking so nicely at the moment. And it's got that wraparound label, which just emphasizes that the only way to make exceptionally good wine is to have exceptionally good vineyards. And how do you do that? You look after nature, right?
Oh, I drank my very last bottle of Circle of Life. I think I used one of those little medicine spoons just to portion it out during lockdown. It's a delight. So expect an order from me soon. Matt, give us one from your range that I should be looking out for on top of this absolutely fabulous Babiana.
Well, that's pretty easy. We have a partner to the Babiana, also named after a plant species on the Paardeberg Mountain. It's called the Monsonia, short for Monsonia speciosa, and it's a Shiraz-based blend. So if you're looking for a nice hearty red blend, maybe something for your wife, Dan, that's a Shiraz Mourvedre Carignan Grenache blend.
Oh, sold already. Sounds fantastic. Guys, thank you. We do try as much as we can to tell different stories, to explore different corners of the wine world. I think this is a really important one. So, Shelley, thank you for tracking me down and getting some terrific wine to me. And I would seriously like to do this again soon because I think it's a very important story. And I can see from talking to Nora, to Nadia, to Matt, it's really important to our winemakers as well. So keep making fabulous wine. Good luck with the rest of harvest. Nadia, I'll send you my cooking CV. I think there might be a job for me making toasted sandwiches down at Waterkloof. And Shelley, to you and the team at the World Wrestling Foundation, thank you very much.
Cheers, Dan.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much indeed. So Nora from out at Delheim, Nadia from Waterkloof, Matt from Vonderling, and Shelley from the WWF coming together with a really, really important space to have a look at. Just a couple of comments coming in there. Angela Lloyd is back. She's refilled her glass with semi-sweet white and says, the Wine Kingdom celebrating conservation in the Cape Islands was published in 2014. It featured all the conservation champions. I wrote the introduction, not sure if available. Maybe Shelley knows. We'll find out from Shelley. And you will see more on the conservation champions here on Dan Really Liked One. I think it's a very, very important space. And Daryl Balfour with a plea, please don't get rid of all the pines. Please, where would Giorgio gather his boletus mushrooms? All right, that one going out to the Delheim team. Okay, so some really cool wines, some really cool people, and that trend continues as we say goodbye to the WWF team and their conservation champions and say hello to someone making her long overdue debut. Dan really likes wine. She is the voice behind Well Read magazine, and a terrific voice at that. A very good evening, Bubbles Hyland.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
I'm extremely well. I'm delighted to finally have you on the show. It's
thank you so much for having me.
And particularly, not just because you speak so passionately about wine generally, but over the last while, and especially the last stretch of lockdown, you wrote some stuff that had me dabbing at my eyes ever so gently, because it really did cut to the heart. And I think you evoked so clearly just how much the wine industry as a whole at ground level was really struggling.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a very tough time for the South African wine industry, and I think a domino effect throughout South Africa. Whether you're directly involved in selling wine or making wine, or whether you just work in a supermarket and a restaurant, it's really affected a lot of people's families and their livelihoods and the food on their table at the end of the day.
We are through the lockdown. We're certainly not through the challenges, and the restaurants, the wine farmers, the growers, the producers. There are still many, many dark days ahead before we hopefully get through all of them. But we'll do so with the help of the people who support the industry, and you're a big part of that. Give us the Bubbles Hyland story, how you found yourself in wine, and then how you found yourself in more vino.
It's quite a windy road to how I got to where I am now. I actually moved to South Africa after a bad car accident at university, dabbled in working in backpackers, moved to Mozambique for a while, worked as a Montessori teacher, and eventually found myself working in a hotel with a very, very boring wine list. And that's where I met my now business partners at Morvino. They offered me a job, and I started working there about 9 years ago. And through working in the industry, I felt I was drinking so much delicious wine and hearing so many wonderful stories that I wanted to share them with everyone, and that's how Well Read came about.
Which was my next question, the Well Read Wine magazine. Tell me a little bit about Well Read, where people can find it, and the essence of it as a publication.
So I felt that there's a massive gap. There's a group of bloggers who do a wonderful job at making wine accessible, and then there's a group of wine critiques who speak a certain language that only a certain amount of people can understand. And I wanted to fill that gap, to make wine accessible, but to have a knowledgeable voice behind it as well. The idea behind Well Read magazine was a massive story with a lot of contributors and a lot of different voices, but time constraints and money constraints obviously hindered it a little bit. So now it has become more like a blog, but I hope just a little bit more of a educated voice than some of the other publications out there. But I sort of want to appeal to the women at home who are just buying wine for their husbands or drinking Sauvignon Blanc with ice in it. There's no judgment. To make it fun, make it easy, make it accessible. Wine is such a beautiful substance that brings people together, and there's so many wonderful stories, and the South African wine industry has such an amazing passion behind it, an amazing history that people need to hear about it. So that's what it's about, really. And on Instagram as Well Read Wine Mag, and otherwise you can read the full articles on wellreadwinemagazine.com.
Which I highly recommend you doing. It's a great space to go and read up on the broader wine industry, and you'll see the wine that Bubbles drinks in vast quantities on a regular basis. Her research is faultless, and we've got some of those to drink this evening, and they stem from the wines that you represent. And when I had a look through the full list that you sent me, I got incredibly envious of the job you have, because it means tasting the wines from these particular spaces. And we're going to try a few of them now. You've gone for 3 Chardonnays. Is that a particular love of yours?
Yeah, Chardonnay was the first white wine that I fell in love with. I used to have an affinity to red wine and didn't drink any white wine. And I started dating this guy, and he took me to Franschhoek, and he told me I was not allowed to drink any red wine for the weekend. I had to only drink white wine. And I was filled with horror. I thought the relationship was going to end very quickly and very badly. And then I discovered Chardonnay. And Chardonnay, I think, is a white wine that's very similar to a red wine. It's got the body, and it's something that I fell in love with. And now I appreciate most white wines, Sauvignon Blanc not so much, but I find that I drink a lot of Chardonnay and a lot of Chenin. And I think Chenin Blanc has got a lot of attention, but I think Chardonnay also does very well in South Africa. I think people are starting to understand it a lot more, use less oak, let it speak for itself, and use a bit of sort of less intervention in the winemaking, because we have some great sites, nice cool climate wines coming out of South Africa now.
Yeah, we are starting to slowly erode that anything but Chardonnay club that did hold sway, sadly, for so long. But I think that occasionally there were some wines that were at fault themselves, but lighter, subtler, more delicate, more creative Chardonnays in a far better space. And we've got 3 of them, and they come from 3 very different spaces. And so I'm going to leave it up to you entirely, Bubbles, as the Chardonnay expert. Of the 3, which one are we going to have a crack at first?
I think we'll start with the Kara Tara. So I'll just show the bottle here. That's in going backwards here. There we go. The Kara Tara Chardonnay. It's quite new. A lot of people won't recognize it so much. It's made by, it's in conjunction with Rutger. It's made by Rutger van Wyk, who's at the head winemaker at Start Condé. And it's a partnership between him and Jose Condé. And Kara Tara is actually named after a town near where Rutger grew up, near Neisner, and as translation means deep dark shadows. And if you have had the luxury of trying Chablis, this for me is a very Chablis type of white wine. There's no new oak on it. There's a bit of stainless steel, bit of old barrels, and it's just got a beautiful freshness to it. So those anything but Chardonnay clan, they can't fault this wine, because there's not a lot of, you're not pulling out splinters of oak as you're drinking it. It's very fresh, it's very mineral, very clean, and just beautiful. Rutger was actually awarded the Young Winemaker of the Year award in 2018. So he used to be a CWD protege as well. So he's a remarkable young winemaker with a very exciting future ahead of him.
He's also a great person to interview. We've had him on the show a couple of times. He's loads of fun. What this says, we tend to think of Start Condé for their red wines, and their Cabernet Sauvignon is stellar, their Syrah's not fine. This illustrates the dexterity of Rutger as a winemaker, and the fact that it's not just those brilliant big reds he can make, he can also produce some really special Chardonnay.
Absolutely. It's also quite interesting. These you don't really hear of old vine Chardonnays. You hear of a lot of old vine Chenin, and these vines are sort of both over 30 years. So I think 50% is from Paul, 50% is Stellenbosch, but both of them are over 30 years old at the vineyards. So without having to use a lot of different techniques in the cellar, he's just relying on the complexity of the grapes and of the vines to add a little bit of uniqueness to it, which is quite special.
There's a great blast of freshness to this. And you're clearly doing a great sales job here, Bubbles, because Wellington Maromba, the new chair of the Black Cellar Club, great to see the Well-Read magazine showing pride in South African Chardonnay. And then Daryl Balfour, who drinks almost as much wine as Angela Lloyd, saying, Bubbles, you've just sold me on trying that Kara Tara.
Wonderful.
Which it sounds like it could be a small town in New Zealand, but it's not. It is actually bottle of South African Chardonnay. Well done, Rutger. This is an absolute delight, and I might have to add a case to my latest order of Start Condé. One Chardonnay down, one splendid Chardonnay at that. We've got 2 left. What are we trying next, Bubbles?
So then I'm giving you some unusual producers. Well, not unusual, maybe on the smaller side that people haven't had the pleasure of trying yet. So next is the Labrun Chardonnay. Labrun is made by Nico Kobler, who used to be, until recently, at Eikendal, the head winemaker at Eikendal. He was there for his entire winemaking career. And I remember when I first got him into the trade and we were visiting clients, and I was busy arranging times with him, and I saw on his WhatsApp, his status was Pinot is king. And I was very confused because he's a Stellenbosch winemaker and he didn't make a Pinot Noir. So I asked him about it, and he's like, no, I do make a Pinot Noir. You just don't know about it yet. And one of his best friends and mentors is a Burgundian winemaker and barrel maker, and a cooper, and he used to visit him every year and developed a love for Burgundy, all things Pinot Noir and all things Chardonnay. So this is his first vintage of Chardonnay under the Labrun label. He has 2 labels under his wines. One's called the Labrun and the other one's called the Valley. So the Valley is more the kind of village style table wine, and then the Labrun is more of the Premier Cru wines. So this is his Premier Cru Chardonnay. It's from Elgin. So a nice cool climate. He's not looking to make the biggest, the boldest, the brashest Chardonnay, the one that shouts and screams. It's the one that has subtle nuances and is very intricate, very detailed, and is beautiful to drink now, but will age for another 8 to 10 years or so. So it's a very refined, very Burgundian style of Chardonnay, and very small production, and something quite exquisite and quite beautiful.
Talk to us a little about aging South African Chardonnay, the convincing South Africans to drink their white wine, particularly their Sauvignon Blanc, more than 11 minutes after it's been released, can be
have much patience.
Exactly, especially up here in Johannesburg, where many people are most upset that the 2022 Sauvignon Blanc is not out yet. But with a number of wines, and Shannon and Chardonnay in particular, there is just immense reward if you have the patience with the more premier cru, the better style wine that's made to be aged. Not all wines are, and rightly so, but the ones that are, we've got some Chardonnay in South Africa that, if you can hold out, can give you such great satisfaction a decade later.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that we just don't understand, and it's about trying to educate the consumer, but the consumer doesn't necessarily. So I mean, with Well Read, I was trying to reach those consumers that don't necessarily turn to wine magazines and publications to try and educate them about things like that, to try and make it a little bit more friendly and appealing. Because as much as we educate the sommeliers, or we educate the wine, avid wine drinkers, the everyday public don't listen to us. They're not listening. They're not tuning in, and they're not interested. So they will just go by what they see and what their friends tell them. But white wine, I mean, I'm not a big Sauvignon Blanc drinker, but I really do enjoy an aged Sauvignon Blanc. And if you actually get geeky and you look into, the sort of in all the literature about grape varietals, Sauvignon Blanc isn't meant to be drunk in the first year. It's only meant to be drunk after the first year, after it's been made. And it's only then that it really starts to develop the characters that the winemaker wants to show. So drinking it in the first year of it being made is not doing it any justice at all. And then once you go into a more sort of a bigger style white wine where oak is being used, then the oak is there to ensure that it can age. It gives it the little bit tannins, a little bit of complexity that will give it the aging potential that you're looking for. It is very difficult to have the patience. I mean, I'm trying to sit on some white wines myself, and you sort of go into the cellar and, well, my garage, it's not really a cellar, and you have a look through and trying to keep those 2015s back and trying to keep the 2017s back. And I think I've whittled down to one bottle of each now from each producer, but it really is a worthy investment, and you can try them, I think up to sort of 10 years or so for a well-made white wine in South Africa that's had a touch of oak, really would be showing beautifully.
I'm reminded of a very minor and fairly self-important South African pseudo-celebrity who I was serving some wine to and offered some older Sauvignon Blanc, and was told in no short shrift that he drank Sauvignon Blanc the year that it was made. So I apologized, went off, poured a glass. He drank it, told me it was a glorious Chardonnay, at which point I explained it was actually a 10-year-old Sauvignon Blanc, and it gave me an enormous sense of satisfaction, as you are giving to people watching Bubbles. Peter Ferreira, hello from another Bubbles. Might have to fight over that title one day in the future.
No, I think he wins. He does win.
Rutger van Beek, brilliant storytelling, Bubbles. Rutger, great to have you watching at the moment. And Shelley Fuller, just responding to Angela from a little earlier on with that question about the book. Hi, Angela. Yes, the Wine Kingdom coffee table book still available directly from us at info@wwf.org.za. Beautiful book celebrating the South African wine story, 300 Rand per book. If you're watching this in the UK, that's £1.78. So buy copies for all of your friends and family. And Shelley Fuller following up with, have a look at #FollowTheSugarbird. See all the beautiful stories from the 45 Conservation Champion Farms, and have a look at our website to find out more about all their incredible environmental commitments. We've got one Chardonnay to go, Ms. Hyland, and even I can work out what it is because there's only one left. And this is what I'm really looking forward to, because this is somebody who sits in that kind of alchemist space in terms of South African wine. He's held in massive esteem by anybody who makes wine in South Africa. Bit left of center, bit quirky, a little bit obsessed with clones, but gee, he makes fabulous wine.
Yes. No, he's a wonderful man and one of my favorite winemakers. But yes, he's a complete wine geek. You don't throw anybody into a tasting with him who doesn't know about wine, because they will drift off and get very confused. I remember going to a Chardonnay festival in Elgin, and he was standing up talking about the climate and the rainfall in Elgin, and he had a graph of about 150 different lines just wiggling all over the place, and even the winemakers in the room were completely baffled and confused by what he was talking about. But to read his tasting notes on wines, it's just incredible. He actually used to be a chef, and he's a master of wine, so he's a proper intellectual. But his tasting notes are some amazing bedtime stories. He really uses descriptions like creme fraiche and things like that you don't normally hear, and you taste the wine and you read about it, and it just works perfectly together. We've got his Chardonnay. His aim was to make world-class Chardonnays, or world-class wines, in South Africa, and I think he's done that. He's definitely, Tim Atkin recognizes him as one of the best Chardonnay producers in South Africa. He's all about clones and trying to sort of show the best of the clones and the best of the sites, and is a very and really believes that Elgin's the best place to plant Chardonnay and Syrah, and now Pinot Noir that he's introduced into it. But as a Chardonnay lover, if I challenge anyone not to absolutely fall in love with this wine. It's absolutely beautiful. It's so elegant, so poised and restrained, but it's got a beautiful complexity to it as well. It's absolutely glorious. It's my definition of the perfect Chardonnay.
So there we go. A very understated assessment of the Richard Kershaw Chardonnay from Bubbles Hyland. Jan Evans Sleet, that infamous graph. So you've clearly got someone out there who remembers it well. Let's go into that Chardonnay. It's the 2018. It is the clonal selection. You obviously love it. You speak enormously highly of it. I know that you're in a good company there, because anybody who drinks this who likes Chardonnay falls for it instantly. What's the magic to this wine, Bubbles?
I think it's just, as you said before, he's a complete geek about it, and he's meticulous when it comes to the making of it. I mean, it's not interfering too much, but he goes and tastes those barrels every day, and he makes hundreds of different barrels and different components, and he just, he will not produce anything that's not perfect. It's very clean. He really understands his terroir. He really understands his clones, and he just has that magic touch that I don't think he could produce a bad wine if he tried, to be honest. He's a perfectionist. But I just love the perfect white fruit. It's got a nice vibrancy to it. There's a little bit of oatmeal in there too. It's got a generous palate, but it's also very fresh at the end as well. So there's a nice density to it, but not lacking the acidity. It's beautiful.
At the risk of securing your status as a wine outcast and being placed in the middle of a maelstrom of anger between the two regions, Elgin versus Hemelanade Chardonnay.
I was wondering if you're going to ask me that question. It's a difficult one. I mean, I think that I don't think there should be. I was actually wanting to organize a tasting with the Pinot Noirs and the Chardonnays, and to not put them up against each other at war, but to try and identify and see what the difference is between the two. I actually had the conversation with Richard Kershaw, and he said when he was doing his MW tasting, he identified a Chardonnay in a blind tasting from South Africa. And if you do that from Burgundy, you have to say which vineyard it's from and which producer it's from. Whereas in South Africa, they say, no, South Africa, that's enough. It's impossible for you to know what region it's from. And I really think that we need to unpack that and work that out and be able to educate locally as well as internationally. What are the differences of the different regions, and what are the differences between the Chardonnays from Elgin and the Chardonnays from Hemelanade? Not who is better, but what are the differences? They're both cool climates. They probably do fight over who's cooler, but I think Elgin is a little bit on the cooler side, and it's got beautiful cloud covers, the cloud that just sits there in that basin, which adds to the complexity of the wines. But I think, I can't choose between the two. I mean, they're definitely my favorite Chardonnays come from those two areas, and Pinot Noirs as well. I think maybe I'd be leaning towards Pinot Noirs from Hemelanade and Chardonnays from Elgin, perhaps.
A very diplomatic response from Bubbles Hyland. Grant Sauls watching on YouTube. I've got to try this wine as I'm a big fan of Chardonnay. If you haven't had Richard Kershaw, you certainly need to. And Daryl Balfour, fascinating insight from Bubbles. Thank you. Which leads, and this might be where Bubbles deletes my number and no longer talks to me, but we have a competition. And this is inspired by Melu Lambert. So it's all her fault, Bubbles. It's not mine at all. Now, much like Bubbles Ferrer is really Peter, so Bubbles Hyland has an actual real first name, but refuses to divulge it. However, thanks to Melu Lambert, I have found out what it is. However, I'm going to give you 4 options. So this is our competition to wrap up today, and I've got no idea if there's a prize or not. But is this Bubbles' first name? You've got 4 options to choose from. So the first option, and I see Melu's watching, is it Mildred, which I think would be a great one. Could it possibly, if not Mildred, could it be Prudence? Prudence Hyland? That's got a certain ring to it. If it's not Prudence, then perhaps it could be Eunice. And then final option here, could it be Agatha? There we go. So it's one of those 4. Melu Lambert confirmed which it is. Send in your answers on the back of a wine.
It's not one of those 4.
I'll tell you what, Bubbles does absolutely fine, both because I know you don't mind a glass of Cap Classique, but also your effervescent love for the South African wine industry and the passion that you show for it is fantastic. It's been inspiring, and just a simple thing like promising to go out and help different estates with their harvest, get your hands dirty, be part of it. Was wonderful to see. Hopefully we have better times to celebrate, and I'm steeling myself. I'm not sure if I have the strength just yet, but at some point in the future to have you and Melu on the same show. I'll probably need
That'd
a fair amount of wine.
We can sit together at the same table as well.
Dan really likes tequila. Here we come. Bubbles, thank you so much. 3 glorious bottles of Chardonnay, a glorious guest, and a wonderful celebration of South African wine. So thank you. Thank you for your debut on the show. And look forward to having you back on again soon.
Love to come back. Thank you very much for having me. It was a real honor to be here. Thank you.
There we go. Well-Read Wine Magazine. Go and find it. Go and read it. And we've got some great there. wellreadwinemagazine.com. Do drop in and give it a look. Daryl Balfour reckons Prudence is the name. I think that's a pretty good guess. Melu Lambert, awesome chat. Bubbles, of course, Melu will be on the show with us on Thursday. Andrea Hervea, great answer to shards between Elgin and Hemelanada. They're both special in their own way because they come from different terroir. Very good point there, Andrea. And Melu Lambert with the final #trouble. Well, I don't think anybody needed further clarity on that. So that wraps us up. Huge thank you to Bubbles Hyland, Well-Read Wine Magazine, for joining me with 3 great Chardonnays from Richard Kershaw, from Labrun, and from Kara Tara, Edouard van Beek. And a big thank you too to Shelley Fuller for organising our tasting with the Conservation Champions. There are 45 in total. We had 3 of them tonight, coming from Delheim with the Bubbles, from Vonderling with that blend, and Nadia Barnard out at Waterkloof with her Circumstance Organic Chenin Blanc. So some terrific wine, some terrific people, and another terrific celebration of South African wine. I need to say goodbye because I'm in another conversation in 2 minutes' time with Aidan Markram, the South African cricketer, as we celebrate the Dan Nichols Show approaching season 13. Before I do, if you're not already, please, a member of the Pick and Pay Wine Club, absolutely free of charge, amazing benefits. Just send through your Smart Shopper number to 36775. It's 3 times the Smart Shopper points. It's all sorts of great prizes and competitions. You get 20% off 10 different wines each month, 25% off a case and a Magnum, and the chance to celebrate great South African wine. 25 million bottles of wine Pick and Pay has pledged to buy in 2021. It is the home of South African wine, and it gives you a great opportunity to support a great South African industry. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you on Thursday with the fabulous Melu Lambert, as well as Karina Goos from Kleine Zalza. Won so many awards last year, and also looking ahead to Wine Future 2021. Join me in 1 minute's time on Instagram Live on the Dan Nichols Show with Aidan Markram. Otherwise, back for more wine on Thursday. Goodbye.